Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Hannah, I'm a non-diet dietitian, and today I want to talk a little bit about binge eating. And of course, we're also going to tie this into intuitive eating and answer the question, can intuitive eating help with binge eating? Binge eating can happen for so many various reasons. It can be a coping strategy, it could just be a habit, it could be in response to a weight loss diet that you're doing, or any of the above. If you've ever experienced binge eating before, you know that it's a really uncomfortable experience that often leaves you feeling guilty and ashamed and out of touch with your own body. And this might lead to you starting a new diet to gain that sense of control back. And then this diet likely leads to even more binge eating. It's a very vicious cycle, but there is a way out. Intuitive eating and making peace with food can help pave that path to recovery. Now, a big disclaimer before we move any further. It is important to seek out professional help if you suspect that you have binge eating disorder. This video will have lots of tips to help you overcome binge eating, but it is not a replacement for professional support. So first of all, what even is binge eating? Simply put, binge eating is when you eat a large amount of food in a short period of time. This is not the same thing as eating an extra slice of pizza or eating dessert after dinner even though you feel pretty full. It's much more than that. Binge eating involves feeling out of control and ashamed of the behavior. You might find that you mostly binge eat alone because you're embarrassed of the behavior and you feel guilty and disgusted afterwards. Binge eating can happen to anyone and you may have experienced it yourself. Recurrent episodes of binge eating might mean that you have binge eating disorder. Binge eating disorder, or BED, involves eating large quantities of food, typically to the point of discomfort, that is accompanied by feelings of loss of control and shame and guilt and disgust. There are many health consequences of BED, including weight cycling and subsequently weight stigma, gastrointestinal issues, anxiety, depression, and also poor sleep. Binge eating disorder is the most common eating disorder in the US. It's important to point out that binge eating disorder, or BED, is not the same thing as binge eating or overeating, and it's not an addiction to food either. Let's discuss these differences. The difference between binge eating disorder and just binging episodes is the frequency in which the episodes occur. For the behavior to be diagnosed as BED, the binges occur at least once a week on average for 3 months. I also want to bring up how binge eating disorder is not just overeating. Overeating is a term that just means eating past fullness. I actually try to limit using the word overeating in my practice as a non-diet dietitian because it sort of assumes that there is a point of fullness that we should always stop at. And that's not really true. All of us will overeat or eat past fullness at some point in our life. While it wouldn't feel good to eat past a comfortable fullness on a regular basis, it happens once in a while. Think about Thanksgiving or perhaps trying a new restaurant while on vacation. It's a once-in-a-lifetime eating experience. Overeating and eating past fullness is not something to worry about or ever feel guilty about either. As we wrap up defining what binge eating is, I gotta bring up that binge eating is not an addiction to food. Believe it or not, there is no such thing as food addiction. Saying that you can be addicted to food is like saying you can be addicted to breathing. We have to eat, just like we have to breathe. And you can't be addicted to something that your body needs. I have a full video where I break down food addiction more thoroughly, so I will link that below. And if you struggle with what feels like food addiction, my heart goes out to you. I am not trying to take away from your lived experiences. I think some better terms that could be used to describe this feeling of food addiction could be food obsession, food preoccupation, or food fixation. But food addiction is not technically a thing. Food preoccupation is very frequently a result of dieting, restricting, and disordered eating behaviors. Feeling this way is very valid and unfortunately very common. But again, it is possible to take this power back from food. So no, binge eating is not the result of an addiction to food. That feeling of addiction that could lead to binge eating is likely just the result of a disordered relationship with food. That's actually a great segue into the next part of this video where I want to describe what actually causes binge eating. Now, it's important to keep in mind that there are many causes of binge eating, but none of them are due to a lack of willpower or dedication. Generally speaking, there are two main reasons why binge eating happens: due to biological causes and/or emotional causes. Let's first discuss the biological causes of binge eating. As I've already mentioned, chronic dieting and food restriction are a very big reason why people end up binge eating. And this is because our bodies have many compensatory mechanisms put in place for when we diet and restrict our food intake. When you limit how much food you're eating, you might notice how much more appealing food sounds. You might experience a lot of cravings. When you do eat, you can't seem to fill up, and you're always thinking about when your next meal is going to be. This is due to hormonal and metabolic changes that happen when you go on a diet. It might seem like your body is trying to sabotage you, but these responses are a good thing. It's your body's way of protecting you. I mean, the human species would simply not be able to survive if the body couldn't adapt to periods of undereating. Simply put, when you don't give your body what it needs, it's going to work really hard to ensure that you do. And for some people, this shows up in the form of binge eating. Along with those biological mechanisms, we do also experience emotional causes of binge eating. Emotional binge eating is really common. Binge eating ends up being a coping mechanism for many. Turning to food helps some people temporarily numb themselves when negative emotions arise. Along with these biological causes, these emotional causes, a family history and trauma can also be risk factors for binge eating disorder. Remember, BED is not due to a lack of willpower, and there are likely many compounding factors leading up to binge eating. If you struggle with binge eating, let's talk about what to do after a binge. First of all, you gotta be kind to yourself. It is so important to cope with kindness after a binge. Be gentle with yourself. I know, this is way easier said than done, but beating yourself up for the binge is only going to make it more difficult to get out of that restrict binge cycle. Next, try to get curious about the situation. What happened leading up to the binge? Do you notice any patterns from previous binging episodes? Try not to be judgmental here and instead reflect and investigate to learn more about your binge eating triggers. The next thing to do after a binge, or rather not do after a binge, is get on the scale. You gotta stay off the scale. Avoid weighing yourself. I discussed many reasons why I don't recommend weighing yourself here in this video, but staying off the scale is especially important if you want to break free from the restrict binge cycle. After a binge, it would totally make sense that your weight would temporarily go up due to eating some food. It's not a bad thing that that number went up, and it will balance out over time. But even if your rational brain understands this concept, seeing that number after a binge when you're not mentally at your best could be a trigger to stay within that restrict binge cycle. You'll see a number you don't like and decide to go on a diet, which, as we've described already, going on that diet will be a trigger for a future binge. So when it comes to the scale, why go looking for information that's not helpful? So again, if and when you binge, try to stay off the scale, treat yourself with kindness, and make sure you don't go on a diet afterwards. And avoiding the diets is actually a really good way to prevent future binge eating as well. Because like I said, chronic dieting and food restriction is a really big common reason for binge eating. Try to stay away from any diet plan that promises quick results, labels foods as good or bad, or cuts out any particular food or food group. Both physical and mental restriction can be very large triggers for binge eating. Next, eating enough and eating enough consistently can help prevent binge eating. Going too long without eating, or overall just not eating enough, leaves your body with no choice but to send you loud signals that it needs fuel. These signals can come in the form of cravings and, of course, binge eating. Again, this is not your body's way of sabotaging you. Your body just needs regular intake to operate at its best. As you're trying to eat more consistently, be sure to incorporate fiber and protein into your meals and snacks. Protein and fiber are both key nutrients that help us to feel satisfied. Try to include one, if not both of these, at each of your meals and snacks, and notice how much more staying power they give you. Lastly, I want to discuss how intuitive eating can help with binge eating prevention, treatment, and recovery. Intuitive eating and the health at every size approach can be really great for recovering from disordered eating habits. But it won't be as simple as just telling yourself to eat intuitively and love your body. Intuitive eating involves unlearning the diet mentality, examining your beliefs about weight and body size, making peace with all foods, and so much more. Eating disorders such as BED do a really good job of disconnecting us from our body's innate hunger and fullness cues. This can make intuitive eating seem really difficult, and it makes sense if you may not have a whole lot of trust in what your body is trying to tell you. But don't worry, you can get those regular cues back. Human bodies tend to operate best when we feed them every 3 to 4 hours or so. Try to eat consistently throughout the day and make sure you're eating enough. This will tell your body, hey, I'm feeding you, you're taken care of, but we can trust each other, and over time, hopefully your body will be able to send you those signals again. Also, allowing yourself to get too hungry could be a one-way ticket into a binge, especially if you are also compounding that with emotional factors too. If you're looking for more help as you begin to navigate these tricky hunger and fullness cues, be be sure to check out my Master Your Hunger and Fullness mini course. I'll link it in the description below. Next, we want to try to incorporate our fear foods or our forbidden foods, off-limits foods, whatever you want to call them. Again, making peace with food is going to be essential for recovery. This not only includes physically eating those foods that you have previously deemed off-limits, but also giving yourself mental permission to eat these foods. It's not as simple as me just telling you to eat that cake. You gotta take those foods off their pedestal and remove guilt from the equation. You truly can have all foods, and believing in this will allow you to have all foods that you enjoy in the house without having to worry about binging on them. Next, we gotta ditch the dieter's tools. Tools such as your bathroom scale and calorie counting app is only going to make that distrust with your body worse. MyFitnessPal and the scale provide you with external information that you can use to determine when, how much, and what to eat. But intuitive eating is all about tuning into your internal signals. How can you learn to trust your body when external information is different than what your body is trying to communicate to you? The next piece of intuitive eating that could help with binge eating is adding in some gentle movement. Moving your body in ways that feel good and bring you joy can help to prevent binges and also help you to alleviate some of that uncomfortable feeling after a binge. Now, this is not the same thing as working off the calories from a binge or using exercise as a punishment for binge eating. Viewing movement in this way takes away all the pleasure and joy from it. So bottom line, will intuitive eating help with binge eating? It absolutely could be an effective treatment, especially when paired with professional support and guidance. If you struggle with binge eating disorder, I highly encourage considering therapy. Working with a mental health therapist can help to provide you support and guidance and tools as you work on your recovery. As you're able to, try to find a therapist that aligns with intuitive eating and health at every size. By helping you make peace with food and learn to trust your body again, intuitive eating can be a really great thing to help you on your binge eating recovery journey. If you're looking for more intuitive eating support, be sure to join the Nutrition Reboot membership, my intuitive eating community, where I walk you through the principles of intuitive eating, as well as foster a sense of community. Inside the membership, you will find video lessons, audio trainings. We have a monthly intuitive eating book club. You'll find non-diety recipes, journaling prompts, and other resources, as well as a group of others on the same journey towards food freedom. I'll leave a link below if you'd like to join. All right, friends, thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss any of my intuitive eating tips. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.